Welcome to the MMHP and the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history.
Hello, Michigan music lovers. This is Scott Baker. I want to welcome you to the Michigan Music History Podcast. I am flanked by Michigan music royalty. To the left, Dr. J. To the right, Sir Fred. We cut from just around the block of the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame in Bay City, Michigan, here at Studio 163 in Essexville. And now it's time to grab a favorite beverage, hit the cruise, and take a trip back with us through Michigan's rich music history.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. And now, here's your host, Scott Baker.
We'd like to welcome you back to part 2 with Mr. Dick Coughlin of the Cherry Slush. In this second half of the series here, he's going to focus on the second half of his career, including the Cherry Slush reunions, a recording that they all made a few years back. That's all available right now. And Dick has spent much of his last few years away from music, also raising a family and working at a hospital in Saginaw and becoming a paranormal expert. He also has a job during the week and weekends, sometimes in the penalty box for the Saginaw Spirit hockey team in Saginaw. And we're going to get into that part of it as well with him. That's one of his deep passions. And with all this knowledge and all this gratefulness, we thank Dick for coming on the show, and we offer you part 2 with Mr. Dick Coughlin.
So we got to get back to your story, though.
Okay.
When, how long after I Cannot Stop You did you guys go back and record your next single, which, you know, it's a sad tale right there.
Day Don't Come.
Yeah. Well,
That one, that was a day I'll never forget. We did that at Chess Records in Chicago. And we were on it, but there was 16 pieces of the Chicago Symphony that were also on it. You know, and USA paid something like $6,000 for that session out of Chess Records. And I heard that the first time I heard that thing come out of the speakers when we were done, that has got to be a number one record.
oh, man, I know it.
That's got to be $1 million seller. And that they what they did was they used that to bankrupt themselves. And they bankrupted the USA label.
Wow.
And, we just got left out in the cold.
Yeah, that was one of the great lost 60s 45s,
Yeah.
without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminded me of the Buckinghams, actually.
Yeah.
You know, it sounded like the new great single from the Buckinghams.
Well, they had used the same orchestra.
Yeah.
You know, the same Philharmonic on a lot of theirs, because there wasn't instruments back then to dub that stuff in. Well, you had to have the musicians there to do it. So
Prior to that, was USA booking those shows all over for you too? Were they helping out with those
Yeah,
combo
they
bills, and
were.
putting you on billings with other bands?
yeah, they would, but most of it was people calling us.
Oh,
And Jim and Vivian took care of a good deal of that. And then the record company would call, like maybe on a Wednesday, and say, well, we've got you booked here or there or somewhere, you know, for the weekend. 2 shows. So then we're back out at the airport loading stuff up again and taking off. But yeah, they did their part. And it was just a sad ending because that was such a darn good song.
Right, and it kind of like pulled a rug out from under you guys when you were really just about to take off, it seemed like.
Yeah.
So how does this affect the band after something like this, that disappointing happens?
Well, it's like a gut punch. You know, you get up to such a high. You know, you're doing national TV. You know, and you're doing all these shows and everything, and you've got records, and you got a record on Cashbox, on Record World, and on Billboard, and all of a sudden you don't have anything. You know, no label, no nothing.
And you even got and correct me if I'm mistaken, but wasn't the record reviewed in Billboard?
Top 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, top 20. I still got that at home.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep, I've got all the hype sheets at home from the record
That'd
company.
be cool for the Hall of Fame there. Hint, hint.
Yeah, yeah.
No, we can work something out.
Yeah.
It's going to be a living Hall of Fame, so yeah.
That's right. We'll dig up.
Yeah, I've got a lot of that stuff at home.
Yeah,
So,
that sounds really great.
If there's stuff you want to put in the hall, I mean, that's
very
fine.
definitely.
Yeah, very.
Okay,
Yeah.
because we want to change the exhibits. You know, want to keep
Sure.
just the same thing over
Sure.
and over again. So now, how long before you record with Jim on Chivalry then? And that's also at kind of a famous place. Didn't you record that with Dave Kalmbach at Great Lakes
Yeah.
Studio in Sparta?
Right.
So what's the timeline there?
That was probably maybe 6 months or so. But we cut the name in half and we just used it as the Slush. If you look on that record,
Right.
birthday, it's called just the Slush.
So what's the thinking there that because you had some name recognition
Yeah.
with the Cherry Slush, why change it?
I don't know why we did that. It was just something that we did.
Now, you said you were the band leader, right?
Yeah.
Was that part of your idea at first, do you think? Or do you...
To change the name?
Yeah.
I don't know. I might have said something about it, but
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I'll be damned.
I don't remember why we did that, but
Now you went back to your old inspiration of birds for one
feeling a
side,
lot
right?
better.
Yeah, which I could never figure why they pushed all they really want to do instead of I feel a whole lot better. Way back then, I mean, that was such a good side by the Birds. So many bands played that. I mean, it was such a popular song. And then the other side, you go with the Beatles.
yeah, the birthday. And that was a good idea because it wasn't just the Beatles that made a hit out of it. We got a good recording out of that song. But the Underground Sunshine,
Yeah.
they came along and they got the secondary hit. We didn't.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
So it's all about who was promoting the
who's
song,
great?
right?
That's right.
And was it Dick Clark that played the Underground Sunshine? Yeah.
Funny
that's-
record rated I Cannot Stop You on American Bandstand. And
Maybe if you would have kept Cherry Slush, you would have got the.
maybe.
Yeah, who
I don't
knows?
know, but-
Yeah.
Were you getting pressure from any label or person, do you think, at the time to make that change?
No.
No, it was just a band decision,
It was
quick,
just a band decision.
and moving on. And you were all disillusioned from
Move on, disillusioned, going our different ways.
already going different ways.
We knew we
Okay.
were going different ways. Charlie wanted to go to medical school,
Okay.
and
Plus, you were probably just getting out of school yourselves, right?
we're just getting out of high school.
Yeah.
And I got drafted, and of course Vietnam was going on at the
Oh,
time.
yeah. Scary proposition
And,
right there.
Wow.
I got drafted once, and I went down to Fort Wayne, Detroit, and flunked my physical. And I was never so glad to flunk a physical in my life.
Yeah.
But I would have served. And I thank God for all the guys that did serve, and for everybody that has served up until now. I've got
Well,
great respect. for them.
all of us knew somebody who went in,
Yeah.
without a doubt. You
Yeah.
know, I mean,
And I decided, well, we had a military police unit in Saginaw, so I went and enlisted there. And they sent me back down for another physical, and I flunked that one too. So one doctor said I had a heart murmur, which I didn't. And the other doctor said I was 2 pounds underweight. I weighed 112. And you had to weigh like 114 to make it. So I ended up being 4F. You know, it wasn't for lack of trying or anything like that, but so I stayed
now you
out.
recorded that on Jim Leach's label, right? The Chivalry label.
Yeah, right.
And what was Jim able to get you some local
Oh yeah,
airplay?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They still play it. Of course, he's got the Jimmy Hollywood show.
Well, right.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of stations all over the country. And we still get airplay all over the country. I mean, there's a radio station up in Terrace, British Columbia. And they play it all the time. They play our stuff all the time. The DJ there is name is Steve Little. He's our bass player now. If we ever do any recording, Steve Little will do the bass on it. And he's got LA 105 in Monroe, Louisiana. they'll play our stuff, and it's fun. And
Well, that's great.
I get messages from people over in Germany that are still hearing this stuff over in Germany.
Was that the fan base you asked me if we were recording live tonight that you were going to broadcast it to?
Well, that one, and then there's one in England.
Oh,
Yeah. And some of the people that I ghost hunted with, some paranormal people, Past Hauntings was the name of their group. They wanted to tune in because I didn't know this was going to be taped and aired later. So they wanted to tune in and listen, but because to them it's past midnight already. So.
Yeah.
But
So, how soon after you released which I guess was your final single, how long before the band just kind of dissipates?
not long. Danny went to law school, and he's an attorney in Chicago or in Gilbert's, Illinois. Gene became vice president of Bruce Cartage, the trucking company. And Art owned a cabinet company down in Tampa, Florida. I was working ER and trauma at Saginaw General and then Coughlin Healthcare. And Brian was working at Bay Music, and then he started working with Dick Wagner. He was playing keyboards for Dick Wagner. And I'm sorry, I was so sad when we lost him too, because he was one heck of a good guy.
Brian's a great guy.
Yeah.
I remember the rehearsals because I spent my time with Dick at his studio there, and he brought you guys in for that reunion show that he did in Freeland there, and I got to meet you that day for the first time, and I got at one of the rehearsals, and Art Hoffey, who stayed in town, and Art and I hit it off. I mean, Art would call me out of the blue every year up till his death, and or message me the goofiest stuff just to talk.
Yeah,
He's such a great guy.
That was Artie. Yeah, we love him. I don't know what I would have done without him. He was such a good bass player, but like I said, as long as I could feel what he was doing, that was fine.
When did you get involved in investigating paranormal activity, Dick?
Well, I've been doing that since late 70s.
Okay.
And before it was cool. And nobody knew what a ghost hunter was back then. And it was the only reason I got involved in it was because I don't want to say where I was because I'm indifferent to the people. But myself, my mother, and my brother were all at this place. And I saw this guy, and I was like, God, that looks like my dad. And same hat and everything. And I tried to walk over to find him, to see who this person was, but when I walked over there, the person was gone. And we had all rode together to this shindig that night. And I met my mother first, and she said, did you see a guy that looked like Dad? Well, she always called him Jack. Did you see a guy that looked like Jack? I said, yes, I did. And it wasn't a few minutes later, my brother, John, came over. He said, you guys aren't going to believe what I thought I saw. And I said, Dad? And he said, yeah. And he was on an upper level of this deal that we were at. And that got me thinking, well, maybe if there was anything out there, maybe I should look into it a little bit. So I started freelancing by myself, and find a strange thing here and there, but all you had to work with then was a flashlight and a reel-to-reel little tape recorder, battery tape recorder.
Right.
Now you're investing thousands of dollars into equipment to try and find this stuff.
What year was it when you thought you saw your dad?
It would have been 78 or 79.
So it was right after that you started getting right into it then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I founded the Saginaw Area Paranormal System. And I worked that for several years. And I've turned it over now to my lead investigator, Ann LaFave. She's running the outfit now. But I'll still consult. If there's some photographic evidence somebody wants looked at, I'm glad to look at it for them and give them my opinion. I won't say, yeah, you definitely got something here, because I don't know, because I wasn't the one that was there taking the photo.
Right.
And but I'll tell them my opinion. I'll say, yeah, I think I'd look into that a little bit further. You might have something there.
Well, I learned about Dick's other passion quite by accident. And I had called him to set up an interview because I wanted to write a bio for the Cherry Slush in 2013 after they had been voted in the Michigan Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame. And I didn't think there was anything significant about the date that we talked, Dick. It was October the 30th, day before Halloween, and I remember it was a beautiful day. I met you in Shields.
Yep.
So anyways, we interviewed, and a couple days later, I got an email message from a woman who lived in Owasso, and I had met her 5 years earlier when I wanted to go out and see where the American record pressing plant was. And so anyways, I drove up there, and the nearest address was a house. And so I knocked on the door and asked them about, the record pressing plant, and, ended up talking to the couple that lived there and telling me, yeah, well, when we built the house, there was all kinds of equipment on the property. We didn't know exactly what it was. And so I was telling him, well, there was a record pressing plant here. Do you mind if I go back in your field and kind of look around? Well, I went back there, and you didn't have to go 15 feet in there and kick around. There was all kinds of broken vinyl and everything like that. Really? So anyways, afterward, I said, well, I'm going to give you my card, and if you, if you learn anything or you find anything, please contact me. So, she said she'd put it on her refrigerator, and of course it ended up getting tossed after a couple of years. But the night before, this would have been October the 29th, her husband worked nights, and in her email, she contacted me and said she had this overwhelming feeling that she needed to find out something about the American record pressing plant. And so she got out her laptop, and in the middle of the night, she opened and typed in American record pressing, and she found the story that I wrote about American record pressing. And my whole thing was they had pressed the very first Motown 45. They had also pressed the very first Beatles 45 that was issued in America. That was Please Please Me, and that's the one that had Beatles misspelled on it. So anyways, the next day, she ran a salon in her house, and she had an appointment that canceled, and so she was in the kitchen looking out on the field back there, and just had this overwhelming feeling that she was supposed to go out there and dig. And so she went out and dug by this tree and uncovered this whole case of albums still wrapped in plastic that had been buried in the ground for 1972 was the fire. So we're talking, they've been underground for 30 some years. And, they were pretty deteriorated, but you could still read the label, so we knew who the artist was. And so she was able to contact me because she found my story.
Right.
And so at this, I said, well, I'd like to come out and interview you. So, and I think it was maybe the next weekend, Lynn and I drove out there. And let me tell you, it was the darkest night I would ever remember. There was no streetlights out there. And I was having a hard time finding her house. It was that dark. So we sat down with her, and she's starting to tell me about these strange things that have happened in the house. And, from seeming like lights were moving. Her daughter being visited by this young girl, a ghostly apparition, right?
Yeah.
And, a number of things like that. It's like, wow. Okay, well, now, when I had interviewed Dick, we had talked a little bit about his activities as a paranormal investigator. So I called him and I said, what's going on here? And he's the one who was kind of telling me about residual hauntings and, the types of things that seemed to describe what was going on in this house with the family. And one of the daughters, the Cynthia, the mother and wife, and her husband Matt had all experienced something in the house. Strange feelings, chills, feeling like somebody was behind you, all kinds of things like that. And I said, gee, I know this guy, Dick Coughlin, who investigates. Would you like his phone number? I gave her my phone number, but her husband didn't want an investigation to take place. So unfortunately, nothing was ever done with it. But boy, it led me to some unusual situations and uncovering some things about the whole story behind American record pressing that I would have never found out if I had not made contact with her, if she had not called me.
Wow.
And
That's a crazy story.
It is. In American record pressing, for years, the big mystery was the fire. There was a fire there.
Yeah.
And it pretty much wiped out the company, which employed over 200 people in Owasso at the time. It was a big, big loss to the community. But, going back and talking to one of the managers there and kind of looking into this thing in greater detail, it appears that it very likely was an arson. Although arson was never declared.
Never listed as an arson.
No, it was not. But boy, the insurance company, that was a real battle there that went on for years.
Wow.
Because they suspected arson and, they were not about to pay out. And then, of course, I learned that after Motown was the big business there for years at American Record Pressing. But in 1971, at the end of 1971, Motown had moved out of Detroit to L.A., and now the company that had represented about 80% of the business of ARP, they were down to less than 10% of their business when the fire broke out. So, yeah, that was suspicious. And, of course, there were some mob connections with the new owners. Yes.
Was there a girl that perished in the fire by chance?
That's what I was looking into. It seemed like maybe it would be something like that, but there were no fatalities. The fire broke out on a day that the business was closed. There was only like a skeleton cleaning crew in there, and it broke out in a corner of the building where nobody would necessarily be. There was a sighting of a car that had been at the building late at night that was never explained.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's an interesting story.
They're all interesting.
Yeah, but I would have loved to have you get in there and take a look at that.
Do you remember the name of the band that she found the stuff of?
Yeah.
Well, there was. I know there was a Stevie Wonder record. It wasn't a band. It was a duo. I'm trying to think what their name, Peppy and somebody. But it was a young, kind of like a teenage singing duo, kind of emulating maybe Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell, but as teenagers.
Wow.
And they recorded for the Buddha label. And they had a couple singles that charted, but it was their album. And they had like Edison Lighthouse. We found one of those. There was, I'm trying to think some of the other groups. There were some, middle of the road instrumentals. There was all kinds of different things out there. But there were some records of Curtis Mayfield's artists on the Curtum
Really?
label. They were apparently doing business there. ARP had a connection with Chicago because that's where VJ Records was.
Okay.
But boy, at the height of production, they were operating 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, and driving records to the airports in Detroit and flying them to companies all over the country. So it was a big deal.
She didn't happen to give you any of that stuff that you can put in the Hall of Fame or anything, or how did?
Yeah, I do have some records.
Yeah, good.
Well, I've got some records. This is getting way off tangent.
Well, it's just such a deep story that I wondered how.
Fascinating. Well, I've got 3 stories on my website that just deal with American record.
We need to follow up on that then. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Dick, where did you head after the Cherry Slush then? To any other musical thing, or did it go right to the medical school before the...
No, I started working at Saginaw General Hospital probably April 13th, 1971.
Okay.
And I was there for 32 years.
No bands in between or anything really, hey?
I just...
Pick up stuff?
Pick up stuff, I played a few bar bands, needed a drummer for a night or two.
But the Cherry Slush reunited.
Yeah, we reunited for the reunion concert.
The Freeland one?
The Freeland one.
And that was in conjunction with, did Dick Wagner put together that CD that had all your singles on it?
Yeah, that came out.
Looking back?
Yeah.
No.
Who did that one?
I did that.
Okay.
Did he put that out on WMG Records though? Wasn't that through our? Because I thought I did promo for that.
But I put the songs together.
So where was that then remastered? How did you do that?
Oh, I don't know. Dick had some place that where he was doing the Frost stuff or something, and
I do believe that we got digital versions somehow.
Yeah.
And Ray York at the studio put them together and put them in order how they wanted them, and he designed the thing with you guys, and I shipped them around to all the places because I was working the label for Dick at the time and that part of it.
Well, I saw you guys in, I think it was Freeland. You did a show, and that's where I bought the CD.
Yeah, the picture on the cover of that CD, it was in the mirror that gave me the idea. Well, we'll know what to name it. I said, well, we're looking back, so let's name it Looking Back. Jim Leach took that picture. He took that photo over at the Rose Garden over by Ojibwe Island.
Okay.
So it was a great picture.
Yeah. Well, it's a nice collection, to have all your stuff on one CD like that.
Yeah.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. They offer new and used records, including local to Michigan original vinyl and CDs, as well as clothing, electronic equipment, funky household items, music gear, and stringed instrument repair. You can find them on the web or call 989-402-1411.
And you've kept a close association with Jim over these years.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you could kind of go in and tell us a little bit about how you guys worked together when you started, when he went out to California, which was...
Oh, God, he's been out there.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Long time. I didn't see Jim or hear from Jim probably for 20, 30 years. And all of a sudden, one day, he got a hold of me. Went to talk to me, and we reconnected, and have been buds ever since. And same thing with Charlie Woodward, our lead guitar player. We've got a thing that we do every night that the Detroit Red Wings play. We all get on our devices, and we talk to each other while we're watching the game together.
Okay.
And Charlie's down in Atlanta, and Jimmy's in L.A., and I'm in Saginaw.
Well,
it's just like 3 guys sitting at a bar.
Yeah, well, that's kind of fun.
Hockey's been your thing, though.
Oh, yeah.
Well, a little nicer this year because the Red Wings are playing better.
Well, they're doing better.
Yeah, they've been doormats here for a while.
We're going to have a tough night tonight against Carolina. But the way things are sounding right now, I don't know how much longer things are going to go on.
And you're an OHL penalty box ref?
Yeah, I'm penalty box keeper.
Keeper.
Yeah, I'm an OHL off-ice official.
For the Saginaw Spirit.
For the OHL, not for the Saginaw Spirit.
Okay.
The Saginaw Spirit is separate from the OHL. I mean, if even though they're my home team, if they score a goal, I don't cheer.
You're not allowed to.
I mean, none of us. I mean, we're there to do a job for both teams. So
what year did you start that?
Pardon me?
What year did you start that?
I think I'm in my 4th year now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ontario Hockey League. Beautiful. And you got it through going to Spirit games, probably? Or,
yeah. And at first when Chris Osgood became a managing interest of the Spirit, they had a press conference, and I wasn't a member of the press at the time. So, but I wanted to meet Chris Osgood. So I went down there, and of course, my boss will hear this now, but I just went down and I picked up a press packet and went up to where the seats were reserved and sat down, got out my pencil and made up like I was reading something. And got to meet Chris Osgood. And then I started doing Spirit reports for Jimmy. And because the stations up in Canada wanted to hear what was going on in the OHL. So I got a pass from the Spirit, a media pass from the Spirit, to go up in the loft, and as I'm watching the games, and I could type in, goal by drug check, assist, whatever and whatever, and I'd send that out to Jim, and he'd have it for the radio stations the next day, the Canadian stations.
Wow.
Wonderful. I remember as we're wrapping up here, that Freeland show that Gary was just talking about with the Cherry Slush reunion, Gene Bruce playing that, that was a shock to everybody that he made it. He would come off a stroke or something.
Right. Yeah,
I remember talking to him, and he's very stern, very, he's grateful to be there, them slight smiles, that he's grateful to be back in a band feeling, but he was very stern about the whole thing.
He was very nervous about it.
Very nervous.
Very nervous.
Yes.
And I don't really think he was all that into it.
No, either. I talked to him and he kind of shrugged me. I was because I did interviews for that.
But I loved it. God, I loved it.
You could tell when he got done, he had that I did it. He gave me a smile and a wink, and I'm like, he did what he came to do. His one last show.
Well, it was so cool because Brian and I worked together so well, and he knew what I was going to do. I knew what he was going to do, whatever song that we were going to do. And we started off with You Misunderstand Me by the Buckinghams, And somebody had forgot to turn on the backup vocal mics. So it didn't sound very good. But when we got up to about our third song, we were doing Give Me Some Lovin' by the Spencer Davis Group. Right in the middle of that song, I swear, we were back. It had all come back together, and we were playing like we were when we were touring.
Wow.
That's the way it sounded to me.
That's wonderful.
The way it felt to me. And
did you guys get to rehearse, Dick,
yeah,
or did
we
you
went
have
over
to?
Wagner's.
They're at the studio.
Okay.
Yeah.
All those guys for all those bands were coming to the studio all week long doing rehearsals, reunion rehearsals. That's how I got to meet these cats. It was pretty cool.
I've got all kinds of pictures of that. So,
me too.
Yeah. And Wags always let us come over and do that, and that was great.
You know what's cool though is, like I said, Gene, he was gone within a year or two after that.
Yeah.
Then Brian.
And then Art.
And our Art, yeah.
And there's actually 3 original touring members left. And that's myself, and Danny Parsons, and Gary Colbert. Now, nobody knows who Gary Colbert is. But Gary was one hell of a good guitar player, and he was one of the original people. He says I fired him. I don't ever remember firing him. And why would I fire him, then hire him as our road manager? You know? So he was on the road with us every place we went. But, and he could have played guitar. And he played with us that night on, at the concert. And
everybody was there that could make it.
There.
It was such a treat.
Yeah.
I remember you and Art talking to you guys after, and Art, he was the one thing he'd like to bring up in every conversation was, man, I love those pictures you took of that night and or that feeling we had, the band feeling. And then you guys cut the track, which I think was the last thing you guys did, which we haven't talked about
when
that
we
yet.
were young.
When we were young.
Yeah.
And how was that, like 10 years ago?
No, we did that 3 years ago.
3 years ago, okay.
Before Art died, about a month or two before Art died.
That's right,
Yeah.
yep. Because Art sent me a copy and you got a hold of me. And,
Darren Dowler was playing lead guitar and singing for Paul Revere and the Raiders. And Tommy Sheckle had got me down to Kalamazoo Wing Stadium because they were doing a concert with, I think it was Mary Wilson, and it was like one of those Happy Together tour type things. And when the association was there, and Mitch Ryder. And I had met Darren Dollar there, and he had sent me this demo stuff that he had, and as I had told him I wanted to do something. We wanted to do something for a reunion thing, a 50th anniversary, because the Beach Boys had just came out with "That's When God Made the Radio," and we thought, well, we could kind of do the same thing. Mm-hmm. So we got us all back together, but
everybody cut their track where they were.
I did the drums in Saginaw,
yeah.
And Art did the bass in Florida. Charlie did the guitar work in Atlanta. Danny did the vocal in Gilbert's, Illinois. And then I drove down to Atlanta. Charlie and I produced it in the studio. Jim was in on that as the associate producer or executive producer, and because we wanted to get everybody in it.
Yeah.
And Charlie's son Mac Woodward, he's got like 5 Grammys now.
Really?
For engineering. So he did the final master. And Danny, I remember I was over at Danny's house. I was doing some work with NASCAR, and they were racing at Chicagoland. And I went to Danny's house. I was staying with him because I didn't want to stay in a hotel or anything. So, but he told me, he said, "Dick, when I heard that gave me shivers."
Was this an original song?
It was original by Darren Dollar. He wrote it he scored the film Rock and Roll the movie. And that was one of the title songs. Okay. But he had 2 versions of it. He had a hard rock version and he had a country version. So we took both versions, split it in half, and made it our version.
Okay.
And slowed it down a little bit, but it was still cool. Mm-hmm. And it turned out just great.
Wow.
And that's the one we sent out to have all those guys master. Or do the review.
And that was your 50th anniversary?
50th anniversary single.
Yeah, wow. Very cool.
And that was it.
Well, a good way to go out, though.
Yeah.
You can still find that everywhere. It's on YouTube.
Yep.
Yep.
It's on YouTube, but we're probably going to add it to the Looking Back CD.
Yeah, re-release that thing here.
Definitely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know Jim and I have talked about that, so we're probably going to do that. Add that to it.
Now, Jimmy's Greatest Hits CD.
Yeah.
He had. Oh, I'm trying to remember now what
Jimmy
songs?
Hollywood's Greatest Hits.
Yeah, but what songs from you guys were on that?
I Cannot Stop You. Day Don't Come. Birthday.
Did he have She'll Be Back?
She'll Be Back.
Okay.
And
all right.
I said, don't you dare put Wicked Old Witch on that thing. Because to me, that is an earworm. I hear that song, and I'll hear that song for a year.
Well, that was a nice collection that he put out, though.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Does he come home often? Or
Jim?
Yeah.
Usually around Christmas he does,
Okay.
but
Really?
yeah, the past few years.
Okay.
So-
We friended each other just recently, and we were talking about maybe reaching out to him too for a podcast if he was available.
Okay.
He's got a lot of stories too. So
Well,
He calls me sometimes.
Yeah, doesn't he sometimes come back for a golf tournament?
Yeah, that was
Saginaw?
he used to come back for one that WHNN used to have when Johnny Burke was at WHNN. But whether that's going on anymore or not, I don't know.
different.
Yeah, Johnny Burke, is he in the area?
He's in Flint now.
Flint.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think he has an internet station, doesn't he?
It's a regular station, but it gets played through the net too. He's on the Fox in Flint. Yeah, I talked to him a few months ago, and he's like, as soon as you get your new record out, you come down and get on the show. He's always helped me all my life. So
Johnny's always been good to me. You know, I've always gotten along good with Johnny.
well, thank you, Dick, for everything, man. I mean,
Hey.
you got a career, you got a story. You've gone everywhere from the haunting stuff all the way through the sports. I mean, there's careers you've touched on people's lives. You've touched through being, the medical career. I mean, you've been there. You've been a part of history in Michigan, and we thank you for all you've done, man.
Well, someday we'll have to talk about my time in NASCAR and my time as a firefighter and a rescue firefighter and a forensic death scene investigator.
That
Man,
will be
tell
a
you.
trip.
There we are.
There's a book right there.
I did that.
We're going to have to do the author podcast on that one.
There we are.
Well, we appreciate it.
Many hats of Dick Coughlin. There we go.
He still takes a lick and he keeps on
You
ticking.
got it. All right. Thanks a lot, Dick.
All
That's
right.
great.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You're welcome.
The MMHP is hosted on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our own Libsyn podcast site. You can also search MMHP989 on Facebook for up-to-the-minute information, as well as both Dr. J and Sir Fred's album picks of the week, posted every weekend. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and the Electric Kitch at electrickitch.com.
This podcast wouldn't be here without special help from Studio 163's Alan Garcia, our podcast videographer and wingman, Mr. Mike Beatty, MMHP tagline specialist, Mr. Eddie Switek, and of course, Gary Johnson, Fred Rife, the Electric Kitch, and all of our special guests, and especially you listeners. We want to thank you.
You've been listening to the MMHP and the 989. From all of us at the